Okay, this is the video about fixing circular references. This is the famous 95%, 5% out of the 95%. You get 5% finished, that last 95% finished, the last 5% drives you crazy. On this one, I'm going to be a little bit different. Instead of going through any slides or anything else, I'm just going to show you how to do it. Now, where we left off, and you'd have to be some kind of masochist to have done this, to watch the very end of that video that I finished. When we got to the end, we said, oh no, there's a circular reference for interest during construction. There's a circular reference for the fees during construction, because these things came, we added all the interest down here all the way across, and we added all the upfront fees and the commitment fees, and they depended down here on the debt balance. We computed them from the debt balance, and the debt balance in turn depends on how much interest during construction you have. Well, it doesn't really, but the interest during construction itself depends on the equity that you contribute, and you have this circular reference. So you can use a copy-paste macro, but I'm going to show you a different method. On the disk, if you go to the chapter number 1, fine, here it is, chapter number 1, project finance, circular references. There's something called circular reference mirror. The reason it's called mirror is you're doing essentially the same calculations. Now what you do is, I've already got that open, you go to this page in this file will be explained in the rest of the video, and you select the function output along with some development fee and some debt options and a couple of debt issues. You can get up to 30 debt issues if you want. I'm going to get 2, and I'm even going to only use 1 out of those 2. Okay, we're going to get much more advanced with this later on if you keep following it. And then you've done it before. Then you copy and paste it. And it's all just fixed numbers so far. There's nothing in here at all. This is just fixed numbers from the last go round. And it happens to be that it's all very formatted nicely. And I also, something I didn't tell you, I put some switches for the development, construction, and repayment period. And I put some CapEx, EBITDA, and working capital in this file, in this other page. And we just copied these items. Now, this will all be explained. I'm just showing you how to kind of do it. Then you go back to your template file, and you go to the macros, and you get the whole page for circular references. You copy that, just like we did with any of the other functions. You go back to your file. I press Control Tabs. It doesn't always work. Go to the developer, the macros. You can do it 20 other ways. I'm going to put circ functions. Okay, and I'm going to, let me do that again, sorry. And I'm going to create it, and I'm going to enter one, and press Control V. Okay. Once you have the circular functions in, then you go and start connecting a couple of these things. There are only a few things really to connect. One is the development fee. Okay. Another one is the upfront equity. Okay. And you go down into your debt part and get that. And another one is the total amount of the debt. Okay. And then once you've finished all of that, it says, well, debt is we can add debt percent, sort of size the debt in different ways that we'll get to later, not right now. And then we put some parameters in for our debt issues. Okay, and we go down and get the debt issues, and Here's the interest rate. Okay, so the first thing you do is get the interest rate, Shift Control R. You get the upfront fee here, and then you get the commitment fee. The commitment fee on a period-by-period basis was here. Now, if you set up your model differently, maybe you don't have a commitment fee. You just leave it as 0, of course, and then you get your capitalized interest switch and your capitalized fee switch, which might always be false. If you don't capitalize them, they might always be true. It might not even be an input. Okay, then once you got all your inputs, you go and you select all the UDF and you put equals circular template. And you press Shift F3 and it has an on-off switch. I'm going to put it to true to turn it on. You can turn it off. I can't seem to spell true correctly. Okay, and then it says get your development switch. Okay, so the big deal here is to try to make this as easy as possible. Our lazy principle. Okay, get your construction switch. Get your operation or your repayment switch. Get your CapEx switch. Okay, and go down and get your EBITDA switch. And go down and get your working capital changes switch. And then we're just about finished. And these ones are all optional. I'll explain what those are later. And then you get all of this is the big innovation. You get all of the debt options first in one little area, and then you get the debt-by-debt issues, and I said, I think already, that there could be up to 30 debt issues. We only have 2. Okay. And then you're finished. And then I press Shift Control 3. Let's do it again. F2, Shift Control 3. And then we get our total. What it did, it mimicked the whole model. It put the total CapEx in, working capital, development fees. It put it on a summary page. Here's the upfront fee percent, and then it shows you how much you have on a period-by-period basis, and it essentially shows you all of the sources and uses during construction. Now there'll be a similar one that goes through CFADS because you've got another switch. Now what we're going to do this time is I'm going to go back and put the circular reference back into the model, and then we're going to start fixing it with our function. And we had let's start with interest during construction. So we have interest during construction here. It comes from downstairs. It comes from 392. It comes from down here where we went through all of the interest and got the interest during construction. Okay, and then we put our interest. We didn't have a circular reference yet. Sometimes you do get one here if you had the debt as a percentage, and then I put all of the interest during construction here, and it gives me a circular reference. Now there are various things that could cause the circular reference. In this case, here's what I'm going to try. Oops, the dog is barking. And then I'm not going to stop just because of the dog. It's not my dog this time, my dog. And then I put I'm going to have to stop. Oh, shoot. Okay, you also, I need to put the total uses of funds in here. That's all. Now, when we do this, notice that this calculated interest during construction was the same. I said it was the same. It's not the same yet. We have to do it with the fees during construction too. Excuse me. Now let's get the fees during the construction. So let's go down to the debt balance schedule and get the total upfront fees And let's go down and get the total commitment fees. Okay. Periodic commitment fees. And let's copy these across. Okay, and let's put the, now it's the same, but we need to put the commitment fees, or the upfront fees in, get a sum of those, and get a sum of the commitment fees. And the whole circular reference problem is solved. Okay, and it did take 9 minutes. Excuse me. A copy and paste macro, if you're used to them, could have been more quicker. No question. Okay, but now let's just do some exercises. Let's say I have a I want to do a goal seek. For some reason, I want to get a goal seek. I'm just going to have to tell you this because I didn't compute the equity IR. I want to compute an equity IR goal seek. I'll just tell you this. I could not do this with the circular reference. If I want a data table, I could not do this. The total flexibility of the model is gone. It's not even worth showing you anymore. Okay, because this really wasn't that hard. What I'm trying to do is show you really can do this. And this tested it out. This is like putting a fixed and a, whoops. Okay, this is a tiny bit different, so we have to do our round business. This is like putting a fixed and a calculated thing into the with a copy and paste macro. So we've done it. We've done it in a few minutes. Now let me go back and explain some philosophical ideas and get through this video. Hopefully you believe it. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it a little more slowly. Okay, in this video I'm going to not waste time, I told you, on the copy and paste macros, and I'm not going to explain all the technical details because I do that too much. In this time I want to show you that it really can work. So we already illustrated the function. Here's some general philosophical issues. It's a really different way to look at the whole business of Excel. And I didn't know how to do this. You just have to try different things until it works. Oh no, the dog again. Oh no. Okay, hopefully the dog's finished. The second thing is this has a totally side benefit, a crucial side benefit, and that's you can verify the whole model. And one of the best ways to do this is to do it twice and do it in a different way, and that's really what we did. Okay, and I found, and you won't be surprised by this, I found a mistake. I fixed that before I started the video. And the next thing are philosophical ideas about what's flexible, what's appropriate or accurate, what's structured, and what's transparent apply just as much here. Okay, now here is our problem. If we have interest during construction, generally the interest during construction affects the project cost affects the equity, but the equity timing, if it's up front, affects the interest during construction. So that was where it came, there's the problem. Now, I have had a few discussions with people. They say, this is too complicated. This is too complicated. I tried to show you can do it quickly. And the second thing is the auditors won't understand it. Well, number one, you've audited the model yourself. Maybe they won't be quite as necessary. But more importantly, it's just like a copy-paste. Now that you can say there are too many arguments in this function, but we kind of resolved that with our table of the debt issues. And you can't verify the function. Well, we showed you all of those line items in the functions, and writing it from scratch is difficult. I'm not saying it's not. but you can go through and try to modify it. I'm going to show you just a little. This is like, I heard all these excuses why you need a 25% or 20% equity IRR in USD, stated in USD in Africa. And that's why we need a solar price of 10 or 11 cents. And there's a project in Tanzania where the Department of Energy said, screw it, I'm not going to pay more than 5 cents. And it's just a bunch of excuses. You have to deal with these excuses one by one. UDF is just redoing the Excel. It's just kind of doing a separate model around the Excel. It makes Excel into just a thing where you get inputs and outputs, and then you do your calculations in the core. It's in fact an auditing tool. So to say that you can't audit it, the opposite is true. And to say you can't verify it, well, it's transparent. We can see all of the outputs. Okay? And you don't have to rewrite the function, but you should go and understand it. Now, as far as templates, I think they're usually crap. I really, really do. I try to make them. They're not very flexible because you have to go and change somebody else's model. And if you don't understand exactly what's in the model, you shouldn't be using it. They can be, when you try to restructure them, they can't be structured well enough to just get everything. I've seen people try to apply a combined cycle model to a solar project. What a horrible mess that is. And they're not transparent because you have so many different things, you don't see where they come from and everything else. Okay. So, I try to make this thing as flexible as possible, and I already told you, it really, from the accuracy FA standpoint, hopefully, and I apparently didn't finish the rest of it, but it's a built-in test. Okay, now here, let's go a little bit more slowly. Now, if you want to see how this whole thing works, you go to that file. And the file was called, again, I'm going much more slowly on it now. This file was called, the reason I called it mirror is because you're doing the same calculations. And if you have the same inputs, I don't care which lines you put your models in, or if you put them in 20 different sheets, or whatever. The fundamental calculations should be the same. So you go to this file to get it. And then then the next thing I did was I said, okay, well, some variables, I don't know if you remember, but I skipped over a whole bunch of variables, and those variables were related to sculpting of the debt. And the second part of the video, some were related to the debt service reserve account indirectly, okay? And I didn't enter any of those because I'm just focusing right now on the funding. Now, if you have a variable that's optional, do you see where it's got a lighter color in it, or it's not bold rather? This is a variable that's not optional. The rest of them, we didn't have to put anything in, and the function, it might give you a crazy answer, but it would work. Okay, you really do need kind of these switches and a couple on the CapEx. I don't see how you could do it without those. But these variables, if you don't want a development switch, for example, if you're just starting at the financial close, you don't put that in. Okay, and it works just fine, I hope. If it doesn't, you tell me. Okay, so that's now, the next thing is just copying the function, and again, the idea here is, okay, it's just like any of our other user-defined functions. You can't operate a user-defined function from a different file, so you have to copy it. And I didn't want to make a bunch of add-ins to your model, your Excel, so you think you're cool by having these add-ins. I said, okay, you can put add-ins, go to Google and Google, how to make add-ins and all of that yourself. I put it all in one place, and we just press Control A to get the whole thing, and then Control C, and then you move to your model. And then once you get your model, it's not so hard. So let's do it again. It's not so hard. What you need to do is, I'm back into our model. I'm going through it again. Okay, you need to have the whole thing selected. Okay, the whole block selected. Now, I also, if you noticed, I put the, okay, I'm going to press Shift Alternate C, and I think we can use these colors. Okay, maybe I should have put a different color in here. Okay, so we put some of our, if it's if it's green, it came from the green sheet. If it's, I used standard kind of, oops, I freeze the paints, okay. Notice that I put the whole, I left 2 columns in the front. 2 columns in the front, 2 columns in the front. This column has a summary. It's like for our summary sources and uses. It's got the totals for the IDC, the debt, the commitment fees, and everything else. This column has some of the inputs, and you notice this one was important, this pro rata debt financing. For some reason, that caused the circular reference, and that's the one we had to just plop in to get rid of the circular reference. Of course, I should have, perhaps I'm going to make this a red sheet, and now we can see, if I press Control-Alt-C, I can see which red numbers in this one came from the sheet. Okay, that was not very necessary to do. I'm just showing you this again. Remember, this is a macro, not a function. So on this macro, you can just have the sheet open. It doesn't have to be copied in the same way I copied the other one. So you can see which ones came from other sheet. Okay, so the true false maybe wasn't, but those are the inputs we needed from a circular sheet. I hope you see that that's okay. Now when you select this, you just select the whole area. Again, if you had put these things in, these dates and these switches, I copied them essentially from the other thing. If they would have been in one column to the left or to the right, we would have had to move this block. Now once you have the fixed block here, you can press F2 to get the function back, and then Shift F3. And this is where we just put in all of the things. And you notice this is the cap X after the ongoing capex. Okay, and this is the tax rate, the depreciation. When I have an A here, it means it's an array variable. Maybe I should have put a T for table variable. I might change that eventually. That's going to be a little painful, so I probably won't right now. So if it's an array, you take the whole line. If it's not, like this one, you just put a true. You can enter it, or you can get it, okay? So that's how to implement the UDF. All right, let's continue. Okay. Now, I have tried to make this as flexible as I possibly can by adding a bunch of different variables, and this is kind of redundant. Okay, the hard part about this function was you have to define every single variable in the function that you're going to use. You cannot get it from Excel. I cannot point, once I have the Excel, I can't point to a range name. All of this stuff has to be read into the function. That's the problem. Now, when I did this, I started reading in every single line item separately. So I would have a different line item for the development fee. And maybe we did want an option to put a development fee percentage in it. If this is a percentage of the project cost, And I put a little, I hope you see how I do that one. I just go to data and validation, and in the validation you can put a little input a message and then even an option. So if I put this as 200%, it says that there's is it really that difficult to enter a percent? You have to put something between 1 and 0, okay? And then it has all these little error checks on the rest of these. Now, you could have tried to read all these variables in separately, but then you run into two bad things happen. Number one, you just have to be clicking it could take you 10 minutes just to click and find all of these. I think it's easier just to put the different template in and you just put an equal sign and you find the key numbers. And a lot of them you just leave as the default number. You don't have an interest income rate on the DSRA. We don't have the fees. We don't care if it's a letter of credit yet. We didn't really need all the DSCRs for the sculpting yet. And the same thing for all the debt issues. Okay, we could have put a sculpt switch in. Eventually we'll put a repayment percent in, and they all have their little things from the data validation, and you can put 20 different debt issues in. You don't just have to put one. And that was driving me completely crazy until I just started looking in Google, and I said, well, how can I get around this thing? And some guy named Jerry Sullivan, who's an Excel MVP, so Microsoft apparently does this. I'm not an MVP. I'm like a dolt. But he said on the very bottom, I was looking around this for, I don't know, hours. And then he said a typical way would be to use the values in a data table. So instead of doing this, you put all of this thing in a data table. You could have your UDF reference these values up to the maximum number of arguments allowed. I don't know. That might be like the 30 debt issues. So that was really nice that he did that. And I have to give this Mr. Jerry Sullivan, I have no idea who he is. He has a tie on and everything. I have to give him credit. And that's where we read it into the data tables, and you have to spend a minute or two at the most, linking up the variables, which I did. And then we have the debt issues, the same kind of thing. In the debt options, that's where we put all the development fees, the upfront, and you just link all of those. So just to remind you how that kind of worked, we just go through, and when we have our interest rate, there should have been a periodic interest rate. And I saw Ida do that, and she did. She put the number of days in the period correctly and all this. I'm not sure. I'm sure she's right about all of that. I just did it on a monthly basis. But you just have to get that straight from the model. This isn't directly from an input, okay? And then the same thing with the development fee and these upfront fees. Now, here's where I made the error before. So if we capitalize the interest, let's see if this even works. So let's go up here to our inputs. And now we're going to switch it from and later when I'm finished with this model, I'm going to show you how this is just not a big deal at all. We put a true here. Now, I hope you see that one of the advantages of this is that you can make your whole model flexible, and then now we could just put a little bit of this should have a little, whatever it is, checkbox instead. I've got to go back and fix that. And let's see if, now when we did this, we'll go down to our sources and uses of funds statement. Okay, now we have the same sort of thing, but we have some capitalized items. So now that means the amount we actually fund in senior debt is less than our total debt commitment because we have some capitalized interest and some capitalized fees. That capitalized interest looked like a lot. And then we can see, well, did this, let's just look at this item. Okay, we have the total sources, equity, commitment, and I'm trying to see the total debt and equity commitment. We can go up here and look up at our total equity and debt commitment somewhere. Okay, our user-defined function found another error. I didn't include the commitment fees in this little calculation. Now I have 6,991 in total funding for the debt. I have the I don't know, where's, I could find something else there. Equity commitment here. I should have put this here, maybe. Okay. Whatever. There's the enough. The equity and the debt financing from pro rata was 9,553. There it is. These two numbers add up to 100%. Okay, it all looks very good. Okay, but there was a little error from the flexibility, so it's just, again, okay, so we just mimic the calculations. Now, when you go into the UDF itself, I'm not even going to open the UDF. I'll show you some things here. You essentially mimic all the calculations. So if you're brave and want to go look at it, here it says sources subtotal is debt plus mezzanine plus EBITDA plus whatever it is that I even copy. That's taxes or something. Equity cash is project cash minus sources. Equity commitment, you have to add all the rest of this stuff. Equity up front is the upfront fee. Hopefully it's transparent, and you just move through the calculations exactly the same way you hopefully did them, and hopefully in a nice structured way. And then the problem is it goes around and around and it tests. It says, what was our project cost last time? Let's redo all the calculations and let's compute a new project cost. If the new one is the same as the old one, stop. If it's not, just continue and go around. Okay, and we have to when we do this, we have to start our model and make sure we don't pass the iteration on the very first one. Okay. I think one of the biggest problems is just to get all the variables read in, and I tried to say we're flexible, and this is where we output all of the variables. There's a whole section in the UDF that goes through the outputs, and that's where we're trying to do it in a nice, transparent, and structured way so you can see what's happening. If you don't have this UDF and you try, here's an example from another big bank. They had a circular reference right in the model, and then because of that, they had to go through these horrible kind of solvers. I used to do this, and they think, I'm so cool, I can put all these solvers in. We could just do a simple little goal seek instead of that. Or here's somebody else who is really smart because they have all these optimized models. Optimize the model. It's like you're addicted to this whole stuff. And you have to press so many of them, and it looks so good. And there's a big, long copy-paste. Look at this beautiful, artistic debt sizing and macro. Oh my gosh. So that's what I think you don't want to do, because they really ruin the model. And if you really... Now, what we're going to do is continue. I have one little thing left to do, by the way. Okay, on this file. Notice our balance sheet check didn't work. Okay, so to balance the balance sheet, essentially, what we really need to do is we have all of this fees and things, and we have to put our balance of the interest during construction and our depreciation on there and the fees during construction into the model. Instead of, I really believe, oh shoot, I was going to have you do it, but you just put in opening balance is the closing balance. We can go up and get our interest during construction from way up here. Okay, and then put our closing balance alternate equal, and then we'll do the same thing. We can get our depreciation rates already from the depreciation rate we had in the last thing. Okay, excuse me for, I'll get our periodic depreciation rate. We can take the depreciation rate multiplied by the opening balance. We can do the same thing for the fees during construction. Now, there might be a different way to depreciate the fees, and if you do that in the circular reference model, the taxes are going to become an important issue when it comes to the sculpting. So you need to define exactly how you're going to depreciate this. For right now, I'm going to use the same depreciation rate and multiply by our opening balance, and then we have our shift control R, and then down here we can go back to the last one and add our fee amortization and our depreciation on the IDC in here, and then we need to put these things into the model. Okay, and I'm going to do something really, no, I can't violate that principle. So we'll add these balances together up here and put them in. Okay. It's just so bad to put any calculations whatsoever in the, okay, this is horrible structuring, wasn't it? I'll put this perhaps right down here so if we had to do it again, we could find it. Okay, what a waste to have to go through this boring crap while we had such an exciting issue with all the rest of the circular reference resolution, and really one of the exciting issues in life because of the way politics, law, everything else, they just go round and around. Hopefully you're trying to get something to work a little bit better, and we have to make sure I'll put a minus on the accumulated depreciation, which I haven't computed yet, and we'll sum all of these, and I hope you see kind of where we're going next. The next video we're going to move into the okay, just a minute. Okay, the final thing I had to do was put the depreciation on the IDC and the fees in our profit and loss statement, because we made our balance sheet go all the way to the end. And I also needed to, I made these rounds, which I don't feel that good about, but I made them round, be just round to the nearest full decimal, because we have these iteration things going on in our circular reference. So it still is balancing, and now we can move to the whole repayment issues. The first thing I'm going to discuss is the DSRA and MRA accounts. The debt service reserve account, the maintenance reserve account, how they affect the funding, and how they affect the cash flow waterfall. So we're going to get more in detail, and instead of this cash flow waterfall looking like nothing, it will start to be a little more intricate, and that's enough 40 minutes.